Hey guys, how's it going? Happy New Year. This video starts the rack swap series of all the rack testing. I quickly want to go over the car and some parts before we start. I'm going to break this video up into a few different videos going over each rack, or at least going over each chassis of rack. So E36 will have its own video, Z3 will have its own video, E46 will have its own video, and Z4 rack will have its own video. Each video will go over power steering and without power steering, and then after we get through all the racks, I will have another video covering a different type of steering. If you guys can guess what that is, put it down in the comments below. But let's go over the car real quick. This is a 87 325 IS, although that doesn't really make a difference. It is an I model, so it revs out a little bit further than the E model. It is completely stock, has a rebuilt motor. It has brand new suspensions. I believe we're on Bilsteins and H&R springs, and it's on some decent tires, but they are still 195/60/14s. They are a relatively small tire and don't have a huge footprint. Start with this big disclaimer that a majority of this is opinionated, and the only factual part of it will be the lock-to-lock ratio. The rest of it is fully opinionated and is me giving an opinion on the rack, being able to drive them all back to back to back to back. Everyone is going to feel out these racks differently, and everyone's car setup is going to affect how the racks feel. So if you have a wider tire, the racks are going to be heavier. There's more contact patch for the tire to turn. If you have different control arms, if you have different bigger wheels, you know, the list goes on and on. Every little thing is going to be different, which will affect feel of these racks. Because I'm driving them back to back to back on the same setup, I feel like I can give a better representation of the racks for everyone, so that you have an idea what you're buying or how the rack feels before you buy it. Everyone focuses on the lock-to-lock ratios, but forgets that, you know, each rack does feel different and does drive differently. So, you know, instead of focusing on what the lock-to-lock is for your car, you should be focused on how you want your car to drive, and if that rack fits in your driving style, then that's the way to do it. But I would not be choosing a rack like most forums say just because of the lock-to-lock ratio, because you might not like how that rack feels when you're actually driving it, whether in the canyons, on the freeway, or on the track. This is the LPSR Lucas Power Steering Racks E30 conversion linkage for your E30 rack, your E36 rack, your Z3 rack, and your E46 rack swap. This is their non-airbag version, so it's fine spline and fine spline. They also have a airbag version, which is fine spline and coarse spline. If you're not sure if you have a fine spline or coarse spline E30 steering column, here are the differences right here. So you can see this is a non-airbag column, which is fine spline. This is an airbag column. It's coarse spline. You will need to chop this extra knob off right here for the linkage to fit properly for your airbag car. Just again, chop that off. Non-airbag, super easy. You can also do if you want to replace your airbag column with your non-airbag column, you can. It is plug and play, bolt in. There's no modification needed. All you need to do is remove your airbag column and install a non-airbag column. And also E36 linkage and E46 linkage. Everything is now available, rageitparts.com. We also have a ton of racks in stock, E30, E36 M3, so your 95 and your 96 plus racks. We have E46 yellow and purple, Z3 and Z4 racks. These are all OEM rebuilt racks by J&J Axle Supply. No aftermarket racks here. So you can go ahead and check them out, rageitparts.com. Now back to the video. All right, E36 95 M3 rack with power steering. It is a little heavier than the E30 rack. Obviously less turns lock to lock, which is fantastic. a nicer feeling in the rack. You could, even with power steering, you could still feel the road, which is really nice. Obviously, it's less turns lock to lock, so there's a little less you need to do. Upgrade to the stock E30 rack, so it's not saying much. I mean, it's just it's a night and day difference from the E30 rack to this. I feel like this is so much easier to drive than the E30 rack was, even with power steering, just because it's not dumb. All right, E36 M3 rack 95, no power steering. Obviously, it's going to be a lot heavier than it was before, and it is a lot heavier than the E30 rack without power steering. So there is a sweet spot in the center that is nice and loose, but once you get past that, it gets pretty hard to turn. I mean, it's a great feel. Right here is that sweet spot right there, but once you get past that, it gets, you start getting pulled, not pulled like with an alignment, just pulled where you have to start really pulling into it to get the car to go to where you want it to go. But like right there is that point where that sweet spot is no more. '96 plus M3 rack, so 96 through 99. This would also be the same in your M Coupe and M Roadster. With power steering, relatively light. Unlike the 95 rack, you no longer have that like little bit of sweet spot in the center. It's pretty much normal all the way through, and it's not like super heavy once you get out of the So like the 95 rack, you had there was that sweet spot from here to here that it was super loose, and then it would start to get tight. You don't really feel that with this one. You just have it's a nice, it's nice all the way through. Yeah, you don't get that stiffness to it like the 95 rack. I didn't have an issue with the 95 rack, but now that I've driven them back to back, you can definitely 96 plus would be preferred in my opinion. All of this is based on opinion. 96 M3 rack, no power steering. I mean, this thing is heavy. The 95 had that little bit of sweet spot, which was not too bad, and then it was super heavy on the outside, but this thing is heavy all throughout. If you're just standing still trying to get out of a parking lot, it sucks trying to make a U-turn. It's not terrible once you start going, but it is like, it's nice now once you get it to speed, and it's very responsive, and you know, you get all the feeling you need. But again, there's no power steering, it's raw. Putting a lot of effort into it driving. Just to finish off the video with some final thoughts, the E36 M3 96 Plus rack is a fantastic daily driver rack and is an amazing upgrade over the stock E30 rack. Personally, I'd go with the 96 Plus rack over the 95 since it's a linear rack and you don't get that difference in feeling like you do in the 95 rack, which has that sweet spot in the center and gets more difficult to steer as you get past that sweet spot since it is a progressive rack. Stay tuned for tomorrow's video. We go over the Z3 rack. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. If you have any questions, put them down in the comments below and I will reply. If you're looking to upgrade your steering rack, don't forget to check out rageitparts.com, or you can hit me up on Instagram at @themassdriver or at rageitparts. And if you're looking to upgrade your rack, don't forget to check out some of those LPSR steering rack linkages for your E30, E36, and E46 chassis. Thank you guys for watching. Have a great day. See you tomorrow.